Podcast time. Hi guys, Caleb Upton here from Echo, and I'm super excited to have Daniel here. Daniel Burstein, is that right?
That is correct.
Excellent. Now, Daniel is the Senior Director of Content and Marketing at MECLABS and a few other brands. One of the more familiar names that I've seen him go by is the marketing Sherpa. He's also a speaker. He's on the advisory board as a member for the University of North Florida. He's an author and a copywriter as well. So how did I go for introducing you there?
That was great, Caleb. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. So to start off with, tell us a little bit about MECLABS. I came across them recently and was super excited about the research papers they've done, and specifically their sort of formula, if you will, the patented formula, I believe, for conversion rate optimization on websites.
Yeah, so MECLABS Institute was started decades ago by Flint McLaughlin. When the internet was just really getting started, and we published through two sites that are maybe more familiar: Marketing Experiments and Marketing Sherpa. Marketing Experiments is focused very much on, as the name suggests, testing, conversion rate optimization, A/B testing, and how to really test and learn about your customer. Marketing Sherpa, they've both been publishing for 2 decades. It's actually the 20th anniversary of Marketing Sherpa this year. Marketing Sherpa.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, it's crazy. And Marketing Sherpa has been focused on the whole gambit of digital marketing and marketing in general. The formula you talk about, Flint McLaughlin and MECLABS Institute actually patented a series of what we call conversion heuristics. So they do look like a formula, but they're meant to be thought tools, because when you think about marketing, at least my experience in marketing before joining here, there's a lot of, at marketing agencies and marketing departments, there's kind of that star performer, right, that has that golden gut and just kind of seems to get it. And then there's just a lot of other, folks probably in the middle that kind of do this, sometimes they kind of don't, and, newer employees who just, are totally new to everything. And for a marketing leader, they don't usually have the consistency of performance that you do in other, disciplines within business. Like in manufacturing, in building an airplane, you can never say like, oh, well, we get a 3% conversion rate in manufacturing or something, right?
Follow the blueprint 80%, it'll be fine.
It's close enough. It's in the neighborhood. It's, manufacturing, you have things like Six Sigma, you have TQM, and you have really these processes that, obviously you need a certain skill set, but that you can consistently follow to ensure that you're getting a good result. And that's why, when Flint first developed and patented these heuristics and these thought tools, that's what they were aimed at, to help marketing leaders, to help businesses, to help new marketers really understand the elements that impact conversion and how they can optimize those elements to increase the probability of conversion.
Awesome. So I'm going to edit this, and for those who are watching or want to check out the show notes, I'll actually link to these heuristic equations, because I find them really interesting. And one of the things, and maybe you can help me understand this, one of the things I found really interesting was some of the metrics that are in there. I would class them as qualitative metrics, not quantitative. And so I wonder how one would regularly and consistently measure something like that without, the biases that we as marketers tend to have. I mean, you mentioned before about, you've got that gut instinct and you can be right 80% of the time. That's great. But for Frank, who comes along and he's a new start, he's not got your experience and he can watch you and try and replicate. But how does, how can that formula really help him, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So they are qualitative. So here's where the qualitative and quantitative come in, right? So these are meant not to give you the definitive answer of what's going to increase conversion every single time, right? When you're solving for them, you're increasing the probability of conversion. What kind of levers can I use? What can I use? The goal with these is then to form a hypothesis, which you test. And that testing, that A/B testing, which I know you're very familiar with, Caleb, that gives you the definitive quantitative metrics. So for example, let's take one element, and let's say anxiety. So let's say that, a certain product, we think, maybe our form is causing anxiety for a certain reason. And if we add some third-party credibility to the form, it would decrease anxiety. So we look at that, we set up a split test, and then we can see quantitatively that, yes, this was a way to decrease anxiety, or no, it wasn't, or there wasn't anxiety there. So to your point, I like where your head's going, because we would all want that one perfect answer. You just,
I know, right?
You plug it in and everything's up. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. This is the system that gets you there. Now, to your question of, okay, well, the newer marketer, the older marketer, the great thing about this is overcoming those biases that you mentioned, right? Yeah. When we go in, we have this bias. If Flint calls it Elevate, he calls it the marketer's blind spot, because we have our own self-interest, don't we, right? So, the challenge is, like, I know for me, like, I'm such a team player. When I'm working on a brand, when I'm in a company, I love it. It's the best thing ever. I'm working on it 40, 60 hours a week. It's fantastic. The website is great. It's perfect. I've got everything there. But our customers don't experience it the same way, right? They don't care at all about our products. They don't care about our brands. They're skeptical, super skeptical of them. And when they get to our websites and they get to our landing pages, they might have 3 or 4 other tabs open. They're looking quickly. They're going through. They didn't spend a month developing like we did. So that's the whole point of the heuristic, is to kind of remove that bias, to look through. It really forces you to step through and look at each element. Now, I'll give you an example. So we do what are called quick win intensives. So we get in a room with a company for a day or 2, a lot of the key leaders from the company, and we go through and we look at what are their possibilities or their best opportunities for getting quick conversion increases. And we use the heuristic to do it. What we do is, we did this, I was about 2 weeks ago at an oceanfront resort here in Jacksonville called One Ocean Resort. And I was working with 6 leaders from this company, and we print out their flows, their whole funnel flows, both mobile and desktop, and every step, and they're printed giant on a wall, because these are some long pages. And so at first, when you're talking to them about the product, about the company, about what they're trying to do, they tell you what they're trying to get across. They're so passionate about it, they have those words. But a lot of times, again, when you're working deeply in it, you can't always get those into the right credible words. So they were talking about how you love the product and it's secure and it's easy and all these things. And then when we walk through the heuristic, now we get to the page and we go like, okay, looking at this page, what is the friction on this page? Right? What is the anxiety?
Are you actually conveying that?
Right. Are you conveying that? And so a great challenge that a lot of companies have, again, they get so passionate, is their credibility to this statement. When we talk about that value proposition, okay, you said it's easy. It's okay. Now, where's the credibility there? And we actually have markers.
It takes 16 clicks to get to the checkout.
Right. And so we have markers they're drawing on there. They're figuring it out. And so I think that's the real power of it. It's we're trying to, you can never 100% remove that bias. It's being conscious of the bias, looking at like a customer, walking through, using your quantitative information, because we marketers do have a good sense from working so much on our products. And then to your point, getting to that point where we're building hypothesis and quantitatively testing it to know. Because these are really, let's be real, these are our best guesses, no matter how good we are.
That's why you test.
Really test it, no. Does that make sense about how to use
it does, absolutely.
We have courses for them and everything, and we walk them through and teach them deeper in courses and all that. So
yeah, for sure. And I'll get you to do a plug at the end for anyone that wants to find out more about that as well, because I think it's really interesting. I come from a very data-driven backend. My actual backend before I got into marketing was, or my background rather, was computer network architecture. So it's very like data, just data, shortest hops, like efficiency out the wazoo sort of thing. And then I learned copy through hypnosis, which is interesting.
Really?
Yeah. NLP and hypnosis. It's persuasion. It's sort of using language to hack your brain and then to get the results you want. And then I got interested in marketing, and I was like, well, hang on. Why can't I use language to hack people to do the actions that I want? Oh, wait, that's what marketing is. And now with digital marketing, you can get your feedback straight away. So you can put $100 in, get $100 worth of data out, and figure out like how, much like what you're saying in terms of like, okay, here's our hypothesis based on, the copy that we tested and the imagery we tested. How's that actually resonating with the persona?
So you started by trying to persuade yourself. Is that what you're saying, through the hypnosis? And then you kind of figured out like, okay, how can I use this to kind of...
Yeah, sort of. I got into it with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and then natural language processing, which interestingly enough are rather unrelated and yet not. Because again, background in architecture and programming and stuff. If you can teach a computer to recognize language, surely you can use language with people to convey ideas. But we have this fundamental flaw as part of being human around when I say blue, I'm thinking of the blue on your shirt. You may not be, depending on what's up on your screen. And even if you are, because of how screens work, the blue that you see is not necessarily the blue that I see. Ergo, we have this disconnect between concepts, which is ever present in language and ever pervasive. And so the marketer's job, in my opinion, is to try and bridge that that gap to convey, again, exactly like what you were saying before, convey the value, convey the trust, convey the credibility, the USP, all that sort of thing with language. And so I got into it from some sort of that point of view of like, okay, I love math, I love stats, and I really like this this whole language of persuasion and being more efficient as a person. Surely there's a way to combine these things, and it turns out marketing was the best way to do that at the time, and I've really enjoyed the journey.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting. Not many people have gone that route. I'll put it that way. But then if you think about it, if you sell from stage, I don't know if you've done any speaking on stage or anything.
Sure.
A lot of the techniques that people use, they are based in that psychology of what works. And if you look at some of the greats, like Gary Halbert letters like those, the language, it's persuasive. It's persuasive writing. It's about getting inside the persona's head and having a conversation with them step by step on the page. And it's a lot harder in today's world with digital marketing being what it is, and everyone's attention spans dropped to 0.4 of a second or whatever the latest stat is. So I think it's an interesting challenge.
It's harder, but it's easier too, because
it is, right? If you figure it out.
Yeah, well, because you get more feedback. So my background, when I started writing print ads, I remember I was excited as a copywriter. I was writing print ads in the Wall Street Journal, and some of the ways we test is we would see how long they would pull for, and it was a big deal. Like the average ad could pull for 6 weeks, and I remember as a young copywriter, I wrote an ad, it pulled for 6 months. That was huge. You know what I mean? And how it pulled is, you had the specific phone number in there, you had the specific, even they had early websites back then, but you just had the overall ad. I mean, now you can get to the point of, testing very specific elements of your landing page, your homepage, like you said, getting instant feedback and doing it for very inexpensively. So there is, yes, I totally agree. There's a challenge of the digital distraction. But there is also that, digital feedback. That's why digital is so exciting and powerful. It's that instant feedback.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And like the platforms, I think, are aware of that as much as they're protective of the users. I think they realize that if they don't empower marketers to be effective, then they're going to go out of business pretty quickly. I think Instagram is a really, not Instagram, LinkedIn, is a great example of that, how they've sort of not stood back per se, but taken a slower approach to their platform and sort of watched what Facebook's done and gone, okay, that kind of didn't work. Let's not do that. Okay, oh, that did work. Let's copy that as quickly as possible, sort of thing. So I think that's quite interesting. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I have 3, I think, that I'm just going to throw in randomly, and now it's one of those times. I'm curious, based on what we've just talked about, because I want this to be about optimization, and not just digital marketing, but like life and that sort of thing as well. Because I grew up around personal development, and for me, I think if you're alive, you have the opportunity to improve who you are, and that's a form of optimization. Whether it's with family, or whether it's in business, or if it's the friends, like you can always be doing something to get more out of life, in my opinion. And so just with that framework or pre-frame rather, and then like the context we've just talked about, what do you think will be an unexpected or unintended consequence of AI in the next 3 years?
So, I think it's interesting that today, I mean, we humans have become cyborgs, a lot of us. I was joking, I was visiting family over the summer, and my daughter is a teenager and family friend was a teenager, and they've got these, I don't know if they're as popular over there, they've got these new Apple kind of headphones that don't have wires.
Yeah.
Like earbuds or earpods, or whatever they're called.
I think.
Yeah. And so I was joking, the kids are walking around them all the time, and you can't see where when they're on the phone or when they're not, or what's going on. Even at one point, we're
And
testing
they've got the watch as well.
the watch, yeah. And I was joking even with the son. I was like, you know, okay, so next year when like the nose pod's a thing, are you all going to walk around because that's the, you know, and so we, you know, a lot of us, and you know, I try to be really careful with technology for this reason. We've already kind of become cyborgs, right? We've already become so dependent on these devices, and I think AI is only going to increase that. So I think on the downside, you know, the scary part of AI is how smart does it get, and does it take, or does it become the boss, and you know, does it take all the jobs and all that stuff? So that's the one side. The other side is, as you mentioned, you know, we humans, we're naturally self-optimizing systems. Even when we're not trying every day, we get feedback, and based on that feedback, we react, and then over time, hopefully, we learn and change and grow. And so the AI, you know, there's so much information coming at us. What it can do best is, you know, kind of filter through that information, and even just make, you know, simple correlations and simple analyses of it to kind of flag things up, and so to kind of help us. So in that way, it's kind of that increasing cyborgization of us, but it can also help us, you know, process the information around us and understand, maybe even see some of those correlations quicker and process that data quicker. I think that the thing that we would have to be careful of, especially in the way we consume media and information, is, does it become even more of an echo chamber? Because the thing that was different, you know, maybe 20 years ago, you know, I was a big newspaper reader. When you're reading a newspaper, when you're going there for information, it's kind of curated and edited, and you're coming across things that you wouldn't, you know, that aren't just optimized for you. So it could be things I disagree with. It could be information I wouldn't be looking for. And there's that, you know, serendipity to creativity, where you're coming across things that you weren't expecting, you're not looking for. But when you come across them, they affect your ideas, they improve your ideas. You go to an art museum, you do these things. And so for work, for marketing, for advertising, I think we have to be careful not to optimize our system so much that we're only getting the things aimed at us. And I think that's true in life too, because I've been married, I've been with my wife for like 20 years now. So I met her in a very different era. We actually met, thank you. That's a whole other optimized system.
I bet, right? Back on optimizing for a long-term marriage.
Yeah.
My generation is hopeless at that, apparently.
Yeah. So we met through serendipity. We met at an advertising agency we're working at. I wasn't trying to meet her. We just happened to meet there. It was funny. I was talking to some younger folks here about how they date now, and I wasn't really. I'm vaguely aware of these platforms like Tinder and Bumble and stuff like that. What I didn't realize is how much they're really just optimized landing pages for the person. Like they test the photos, they test and you might be well aware of this already. But I was they test the photos, they test the copy. You even get a rating, I think, on Tinder, and so you're like only matched up with people of similar ratings. And so dating has become CRO essentially, because we're just, you know, people are trying to optimize that landing page expression of themselves, that perceived value of themselves, not their real selves. And so there's perhaps a benefit out of the 7 billion people in the world. You're more matched to someone who, you know, you want. But when AI gets too smart about matching us just to certain characteristics or the things we think we want, we don't find through serendipity those things we might never know. You know, I might have never met my wife. I was just AI perfectly matched with, you know, whoever that Tinder or Bumble said I should be matched with. So
yeah, have you seen the movie? I think it's Timer. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's a very good movie. Yeah.
What are you talking about, right? Basically.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy. Yeah. I did try internet dating back in New Zealand, probably 11, 12 years ago now, and I suspect at that time it was not AI. It was, you know, scripted, looking at tags, looking at keywords, assigning a score, and then just sort of collating. I haven't looked recently, so I have no idea. It would be interesting to know, like, OkCupid put out some interesting stats from the data that they have on their platform. But I think one thing we don't necessarily think about with all of this is the kind of information we're giving out and just how much. I want to get back to that. You said something that was really interesting, and I've heard it a couple of times, and I'm acutely aware of it because of Cambridge Analytica. But you mentioned the echo chamber effect, where we have this self-curated, almost self-aggrandizing feed of information that just aligns with us and doesn't really provide any friction. I'm curious if you think about like how we would have been, you know, a couple hundred years ago. You probably don't have to go back that far, but do you think we would have been better equipped mentally and emotionally to deal with conflict, to deal with friction then than we are now?
Well, I think in some ways, yeah. I think, you know, the challenge we face, and I mean, this is going back over 100 years, is the increasing speed of life, and, you know, how technology increasing the speed of life. And we don't really naturally like step back and take that breath. And, you know, if you ever do yoga or you know, it's some of those Eastern philosophies, there's effort and there's ease. And I think it's so hard in modern life to step back. And so when you talk about conflict, you know, there's some issues now in the US, I don't know if you see, about police shootings, for example. There's two sides to that. I'm, you know, not going to take a side. But one of the things that, you know, every time for every situation you hear about it, it's because it's that quick split-second action where someone felt like they had to act in that moment. And a lot of times what they're trying to teach now and to change some of the training in the police department is about conflict resolutions, about stepping back. It won't work in every situation, you know, for not saying it won't work in every situation. But so many times we feel like we have to act in the moment. And I'll say in my own life, the errors I've made, whether it's being on a call with a client and them asking a question that, you know, maybe I should have checked with my team first before I answer. Like, we'll get it done by Monday morning.
Design will be fine.
Well, yeah, we'll meet that deadline. It'll be easy. And then you go back to the team and they're like, that's 3 weeks of work. You know, there's so many times, perhaps with a, you know, answering a question from my wife, jumping into in a meeting, you know, where I feel something comes up where I feel like that's not a doable thing. But what I've learned is so many times just step back, take a deep breath. There are so many things you don't have to decide. Thinking fast and slow, right? There are some things that in the moment, in an emergency, hey, well, you know, what should I do in a car accident? But there's really a minute amount of decisions we make. We think it's a lot more decisions than it is. And so many more times we step back, we de-escalate conflict, we make better decisions if we took a beat and, you know, paused and thought about it.
Yeah, I think there's a really good book about split-second decisions called Blink. Have you read that one?
No.
No, it's a really quick read. It's super thin. It's about first impressions, but they sort of go on about split-second decisions as part of that. And is it Blink or is it thin? No, it's Thin Slicing, I think. It's one of them. I'll look it up and put it in the notes. But they talk about making decisions on extremely little information. And one of the examples they gave, which has always stuck with me, was there's this statue that some museum, I don't know if it was the Louvre or, you know, some really big museum wanted to exhibition, and they believed it to be an original of like Leonardo da Vinci or something like that. And they were scheduled to do a big showcasing and opening and all that sort of thing, and for the exhibition. And they were trying to fly in this expert to give her opinion on it, and they'd already like run these tests and all this sort of thing. And so like the data confirmed that it was an original based on the initial tests they did. She got there 3 days before opening. And they took her there and she looked at it, and within a fraction of a second she went, it's a fake. And they were furious because, you know, they'd already tested, they had all these preconceived notions, they'd spent a lot on marketing it and all this sort of thing, and they were super excited to have the opening. And she's like, no, it's definitely fake. Have you run this test? Yes. Have you run this test? Yes. Have you run this test? Yes. Okay. I get that, but it's a fake. Can we run this test and this test and this test? And so they were very reluctant because of the timeframes on these tests. So they had to delay the opening, I believe. And anyway, like drama and whatnot, as all good stories have. And they got the results back, and sure enough, it was an incredibly elaborate fake. And the question was asked, like, how could you have known that in a fraction of a second of seeing it when we did the standard tests and it was pass with flying colors. And I think that's a really, really good example, which kind of loops back to what we were saying earlier about like that gut instinct and your capacity to, over time, optimize for certain results, and being able to, with the kind of body of knowledge that we collate, to be able to get really good, quick insights. But I think something that I've seen and experienced personally is that we don't necessarily value that. We second guess it, and we end up in the situation where, you know, we don't listen to our gut, or we're taught not to listen to our gut because we're taught to show we're working, or like there's these things that society tells us around the right way to do things. And I feel like that's kind of hindering our optimization and introducing all this noise around emotional instability and that sort of thing for a lot of people. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's a balance. So the way that gut works, whatever we call the gut, and, you know, that kind of, you know, that quick thinking is pretty fascinating. It's, you know, a lot of times before we consciously make a decision, we're subconsciously making a decision. And that's, I think, comes in. So then we kind of just try to backfill and say, okay, here's why I made it, even when we don't always understand it. That's
backwards rationalization, right? That's what it's called.
Right. Absolutely. Exactly. I've heard it called, I heard it called backfilling with logic, which I think is a nice explanation, because we want to think we're logical creatures. Yeah.
Well, we want to think that. It's logical.
Right. Yeah. So I think a lot of times, you know, there is definitely value in the gut and in understanding why you think something or why you have that feeling. But you know, that can also, you know, serve us wrong. So what I found is, you understand the gut decision, but, you know, if you give it time, it's amazing how your subconscious works to, you know, actually work out problems. So and I'll give you two examples, like for the marketer in life. For the marketer, the gut decision can be tough because a lot of times we're making that gut decision, and I hear this all the time, because of how we would react to something. And so a lot of times we have to think about, you know, are we the customer? So if we're not in the customer set, it doesn't always matter how we react to something. So for example, a long landing page. I've always heard, you know, some designers say like, oh, I would never read a landing page that long. That's ridiculous. And it's like, no, yeah, right. You're not the customer. I don't really care what you would do. What would you do in the purchase decision? So two great examples. When I started out as a young copywriter, I was writing for these very high-end luxury real estate properties in Colorado, in Bachelor Gulch, at Beaver Creek. There's these fancy ski resorts. Millionaires are buying them, ski in, ski out, very nice. And, you know, I wrote some concept around the idea of going in and then going to ski. And I remember my boss at the time saying, what are you talking about? These are CEOs of companies. They're not sleeping in. They wake up at, you know, like 4 a.m. and check the markets in Asia or whatever. You know, and as a kid right out of college who, you know, many semesters I didn't have a class before noon, I was like, why bother being rich and powerful if you can't sleep in? I don't get it. I'm getting on now, but I wasn't a target set. I wasn't in the right customer. So it doesn't matter what what does the customer think? And so one other quick example, we're doing some company that they had a product that I thought was very much built on trust. They were trying to do kind of like a Web 2.0 hip, you know, way of showing that it's a newer version of that type of product and fun and stuff like that. And so they had this video, a hero video that was playing in the background, is all about it. And it was silly and entertaining, but you know, they joked like it was a real look at something, but it was just kind of a joke look. And so I was kind of worried of like, well, wait a minute, if this is based on trust, you know, are you hurting your brand with this? Yeah. And so the response was, no, we did testing on it and it worked. And so I was like, okay, so we're testing, right? So think about testing, right? You have to understand what are some validity threats, what's actually behind the testing, and unpack that. So I was like, all right, you know, tell me about this testing. And so it turned out they did kind of UX testing on 100 people, and 100, you know, of those 100 people, a lot of them found the video very entertaining. And so that's when I brought up, even when we're the same person, we're different people in different situations. So if I'm in a UX testing environment, if I'm in a focus group and I'm watching a video, probably there because I'm, you know, paid to be there, probably bored. If I see an entertaining video, that's what I want to see at the time. Now the difference is for this product, something bad just happened in my life. I feel like my life isn't secure enough. I'm actively searching to find solutions to that problem. How can I make my life feel more secure? I come across this webpage and I see a silly video. I'm in a very different frame of mind. I'm not that same person. I'm not going to, react the same way.
Yeah.
So that's where, again, our gut, like, yes, my gut, a short landing page, that video would work there. That's, that would be the right thing. Well, if you're not the customer, or if you're not in the customer's mindset, it might not be right. Here's, just another example, less specific to marketing and testing. I used to answer emails very quickly and write emails very quickly. And now what I've learned is a lot of times you don't have to reply to that email right away. You can open it, read it, think about it, and then respond a little later and let your subconscious work. And so one example is we had a speaker, very high profile speaker, someone was really excited to have speak at our event. And I negotiated with that speaker to speak for nothing, for free, just speak there. And I was a big fan of, awesome guy, I was very excited about it. So a month or two later, our event manager comes to me and says, hey, we haven't gotten whatever we needed from that speaker, headshots, bios, titles, whatever. We're about to go to print. We need it. They're not getting back to me. So I take an email from that speaker, I send it to, and I copy some key people in the organization, and I say, hey, we haven't gotten the stuff, we need it. So he responds right away. That was the upside. And he said, he gave the information. Then he sent a second email. He said, you copied people that work for me, and you included information about our back and forth negotiations. I don't appreciate that. And I felt horrible. That was the last thing I wanted to do. And I get into the thought of like, okay, in the moment when the, event manager comes to me and says, we have this challenge, right away I want to solve it. We're going to print in 3 days. We're not going to print in 3 seconds. I could have stopped, thought a little before I sent the email. And then I would have thought of like, okay, and that's a great tip. Don't reply to email strings, because you always just search in your inbox, reply to email string with other people, because you forgot what you had below that email string. So
it's like the Gmail's, are you drunk? I'm not going to let you send a message right now filter.
And that's where AI can help us, right? That's where technology can help us. So gut definitely has value. I don't want to undermine that value. I mean, there's the collective wisdom that we subconsciously can apply to a problem. But at the same time, we have to, consider other factors. We have to consider, why am I having this gut reaction? And, are there other factors going on? Yes, in that example, the gut reaction, that was the best way to get a quick response from that person, it turned out. But what are other things that can happen as well that, you're not factoring in?
Yeah. So is this the best reaction, and is it serving everything, or is it just like a short-term fix? And like, I suppose a lot of, especially in business, I think a lot of decisions can have flow-on consequences that people don't necessarily think about, especially with communication. I'm convinced at some point in time I'm going to do a video or a blog post on all the things I wish I could say to customers, but haven't.
Give me an example. What's one of them?
On a podcast, a customer might watch.
You can be very generic and vague.
No, yeah. I had a question ready for you. I wasn't expecting you to throw one back at me.
I'll give you one while you're thinking. And this is a challenge I get all the time. And so I gotta find a nuanced way to say it. But so if you're in, and this is where things like the value proposition workshop help, or this is where things like the heuristic help, where we can step out of ourselves and get into like speaking for the customer. So you get in a boardroom with 6-10 people from the company, you get in there with agencies, you get in there with consultancies, and you get this kind of feedback loop, this group think of how great the product is, and we're going to say all these things, everyone's other than it's going to be amazing. As a writer, and the one that has to express into words, we have to be a little skeptical to say, really? Like, I'm on your side, believe I'm on the team, but I'm not serving you if I'm not looking like the customer, because again, the customer doesn't care. Like, you can we're the best ever at whatever, and you have to make that claim of like, really, does the customer think that? Is everyone going to think that? And so, and a lot of times too, you're dealing with, if you're familiar with HIPPO, the highest paid person's opinion, you're dealing with powerful people, high paid people, smart people, engaging people. But when they don't, kind of step out of it and think about like, okay, how is this going to play in the marketplace? So I had this as a client. We had a PR agency, a good PR agency. But we had an event that we were producing. We produced a Marketing Sherpa Summit. And they had this press release about like, I forgot what the headline was. It was like the Marketing Sherpa Summit. It's the only event to go to this year and best event ever, whatever. And they wrote it very nicely. And I had to push back. I was like, look, I think our summit's great. And you think our summit's great. There are other good summits. There are other good events. People can go to other ones. They can learn from them as well. We can't just say the best ever. No one's going to believe that. Like, what can we credibly say that people will actually believe and create a value proposition? So when you're marketing, it's important to understand who is your ideal customer and how can you serve them. But then also, who's not your ideal customer, and how are you not going to serve them? Because if you try to serve everybody with everything and say you're the best ever,
it's a nightmare.
Nothing to no one. So, there you go. I put myself out there.
You did.
That's what I would say to a client. Well, the big question I would say is, really? How are people going to think? How is this going to play into Pekin here? Like, what are people going to think?
Yeah, I think the one that's come to mind is a really kind of moment. Although the specific scenario was we'd split tested a few dozen different combinations of creative and copy on Facebook ads. It's my main sort of thing that I do, and the language we'd used was getting pretty playful, not risque per se. Like the demographic was very sporty, sort of macho American guys sort of thing. So
other macho Australians and macho New Zealanders. I noticed how you just threw Americans under the bus.
Well, it was an American demographic, so
okay,
specifically,
okay.
I'm not going to comment about Australian men.
That's fair.
Kiwi guys are awesome, but I'm biased, so being one and all. Anyway, so the feedback we got was like, we've had some negative pushback about the language, and it's like, okay, but the conversions are up. Like, the numbers are good. So do you care more about a couple of people who have expressed issue, or do you want more sales? So there were some choice words I wanted to say, but didn't.
So that is outlier syndrome. And that is a great reason for A/B testing, right? Because the company gets 1 or 2 or 5 emails from a disgruntled person. You're going to want to understand that and respect that, but are those outliers, or do they really represent, the core group of
I think they're powerful. I think it's really good, because if they care enough to do that and you can solve their issue, they're probably going to be great referrals or testimonies for starters, because they're emotionally involved in whatever's going on. Now, they may have just been having a bad day, sure, and they saw it or whatever, so they've lashed out, so to speak. But if we had an example, a client recently that had this happen, and they actually turned around and got a 4 or 5 star rating from someone who had given them a 1-star rating, and complained by, like you say, looking at it, going, okay, this is an outlier, what's going on here? And then taking the time to connect and go, okay, I understand, how can I turn this around for you? Which I think is really powerful. Because most people don't care enough to complain.
Right. So, but I think there's 2 things to consider. I think there's that group that is in your ideal customer set and that cares enough to complain. So I wrote an article. I don't know, are you familiar with the show Curb Your Enthusiasm and Larry David? I don't know if you get that.
I'm not, but maybe I should be. Are you making a recommendation?
Yeah, well, I think it's awesome and fascinating. So I'll briefly sum it up. Larry David, he's the co-creator of Seinfeld. I don't know if you've ever heard of Seinfeld.
Yes, definitely.
And, so okay, that's big over there too. And so anyway, he has this show where he basically just goes around in life and he kind of says all of these complaints that no one would say in polite company. And so that's the whole joke of the thing, is that this guy is such a jerk. It's like, on the one hand, we all think those things, but on the other hand, you can't really. Yeah. And so I made my joke that Larry David is the best customer in the world, because that's it. In the ideal world, customers would always tell you their feedback. They'd proactively tell you these things. Yeah, mostly, but like you said, 99.99% of customers don't care. They're going to have a bad experience and move on and never purchase from you again. You never know. Customer feedback is great. It's gold. You want that, So it always drives me nuts. If you ever get the no reply email from a company. So a company has the gall to email me. They're emailing me constantly, and then do not reply to this email. We're not even listening. It's an unmonitored email box. It's crazy. How much are they investing? What is their cost per acquisition? How much are they investing getting in front of people? If people want to reply, listen, listen to them.
Especially when you're like signing up to a list or something as part of an automated sequence. It's like, okay, how much do you hate money?
Right.
You paid to get me in front of you. I gave you my information, and I don't want any like. This is very one-sided. But this reminds me of the question I was going to ask you, because we connected through I think it was MECLABS. I filled out one of those wonderful forms in exchange for a lovely PDF, I believe, and as most of us do. And pardon?
It's a value exchange, right?
It is, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the cause of the marketing, especially in lead generation, is that whole micro exchanges and value and escalation. But I was really impressed, and I reached out to you with regards to the level of personalization and just how like earnest some of the emails that were in that automation was. Because I know, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I will say with certainty, I know that was an automated response that came through. But I was so impressed, I decided to reply as though it was you. And then you emailed back, which was just awesome. So A, thank you. And B, how much kind of engagement like that do you get out of that specific flow? Because it was just so well written, in my opinion.
Well, first of all, thank you. I know you are an excellent judge of marketing, may I say. No, so I think, so that's a great example where when we look at mediums that can be two-way communication mediums, this is what we were just talking about, and we force them into being one-way communication mediums. Not only is it rude to the customer and disrespectful, but we're overlooking a significant call to action. So when a lot of companies send out emails, what's the call to action? It's click on a button or click on a link or something like that. And obviously we have that too, right? But replying
to a relationship, it's the taps.
It does. Replying to an email is a call to action. So when you think about the emails that you are most likely to open and get and look at, it's not the newsletter. I mean, we send newsletters, they're important, right? It's not the promo send, it's none of that. It's when someone actually emails you. It's like a friend or a colleague, or, I mean, those are the ones you're searching for in your inbox, right? As you're going through all the junk. And so, like you said, it's that two-way communication. And I think companies overlook the fact that just replying to an email is a really powerful call to action that they should engage in. So yes, to your point, I'll admit, I wasn't up at 3 a.m. American time when you downloaded that. I didn't really send the email. We do have a marketing automation platform, so you got me there. But yeah, I mean, we one thing that especially is right for our brand, and I think it's right for a lot of brands is often overlooked, is bringing humanity back to marketing. So we kind of started this conversation talking a lot about technology. Technology can be powerful, but technology shouldn't really always be the front end. Like people very rarely want to passionately engage with technology. Sometimes they just want a quick answer to a question. They go to Google to search, maybe a chatbot would work. But what's really lacking in this world, filled with technology and marketing, is that humanity. So even if you're using technology, how can you bring that humanity? How can you write a real email? How can you have a genuine response? We write back to everyone who writes us, whether they buy from us or not. It's just same thing as the really basis of content marketing, inbound marketing, that whole approach. Serve people. Start by serving people. Start by giving before you ask. Start by giving before you get. And when you do, then you'll find that those people are going to turn into customers over time. It can work in the short term. I mean, I'm not going to pretend we live in a unicorn, rainbow world. It can work in the short term to do jerky things like spam people or just try to buy a bunch of traffic and get them to buy products and products that don't even serve them. It's not impossible. But for real term, sustainable success, and honestly, success that's a lot more fulfilling, really, really serve people. It's, that's the thing. It's fun answering those emails. Even when people are complaining, it's fun to have that human engagement. It's fun to get to meet you and connect with you. That's a fulfilling thing. There's a conversion in the sale, but you actually really feel like you're serving another human being. And I would suggest that marketers really overlook that at their peril, both to their own well-being and conscience and to the long-term sustainability of their brands.
Wow. Thank you. That's a really good answer. It actually answers, I think, but I'll ask it anyway. The second question I was going to ask you, which is, what advice would you give someone just starting out in your specific field?
I think the biggest thing is that, be a human being. Like, sometimes we have this kind of fallacy of like, at home, we're one person with our friends and our family, and at work, we're a totally different person with our colleagues and our customers. And I think that's on two levels. There's one at the success level. Don't, as a marketer, do something that you as a customer wouldn't want or would never do, And it comes to like writing those ridiculous headlines that no one's going to believe, or, offers or products or all of these things. If it's going to alienate you, if you would never go for it as a customer, don't try it as a marketer. I mean, you have to be, even as a junior marketer, your job is to be the advocate for the customer. I mean, every touch point with the customer affects your brand. And if as a marketer, your job is the brand, right? Your job is to build up that brand, your job is to get conversions, and your job within that organization. It's uncomfortable. I'm an introvert. I don't like being, the jerk in meetings and speaking up. It's saying like, hey, we're not doing right by the customer. We need to change things. We need to do right by the customer. We've got a lot of research actually into what we call customer first marketing, that the ultimate success really lies in putting the customer first. So one, think like the customer when you're putting out your marketing, when you're building your products, when you're inside the company, no matter how junior you are, advocate for them. And then, the second thing is, look at what is the value proposition for your brand. You should be serving people in what you're selling, but also with your marketing. How can you take a servant-based approach? How can you serve people with your marketing? How can you create things of value and wonder in the world? We don't need more crap out there. We don't. I wrote a post recently about content marketing, and even in the time I've been doing it, it's gotten harder as just the amount of content has grown and grown and grown.
Oh yeah, we have automation as well now. Like, there's several platforms out there that you give them a couple of keywords and they'll spin up somewhat researched articles that are written by a contextual AI, and like some of them are really damn good.
Well, yeah, but so one thing I asked in the post, do you really need more low value SEO content? So it's funny, we were talking to a company the other day, and we talked about like in their flow, it would help to have some content to explain how they do what they do, and it makes more people to buy. And right away they go to SEO. They start with SEO. Google has just ruined content for that reason. Content is not just a bunch of keywords, right? Again, content, when you think about what it was a book, it was a newspaper, it was something of value to someone, right? And so yes, SEO is important, but if your brand is just known for putting out a bunch of low value AI written by non-native speakers, some of them can write good stuff, but some of them just very low value, kind of like I call it book report content. I mean, what does that really say for your brand? What does that really say for someone who's going to buy and interact with you? You don't value it enough. You don't value the content enough. You don't value them enough. How are you really going to value them when they purchase? So kind of look at in the world. You've got to ROI it. It's got to have business sense. But look out in the world. How can you add, and how can what you put out in the world do something to make things even just a little bit better, right? If all 7 billion of us took that approach, it's kind of Pollyanna-ish. If we all took that approach, no matter what we were doing, if we're cleaning floors, if we're putting up roofs, if we're teaching children, if we're, whatever we're doing, if we're marketers, if we're just trying to make things a little bit better with what we're doing, I think we'd all be a lot better off.
That's awesome. And I think that's a great place to actually end the recording. So how can people find out more about you? How can they get in touch and that sort of thing? Feel free to plug here.
Here's the plug. So I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, Daniel Burstein. When I was a kid, it wasn't fun having such a unique name. I wanted to be Ed Smith or whatever, or Mike Smith. But now that social media is so prevalent, it helps. There's no other Daniel Bursteins really, so you can search and easily find me. And then you can go to MECLABS.com, marketingsherpa.com, marketingexperiments.com. 99% of people that interact with us never pay us a dime. Ton of free stuff up there, a lot of free research, free information. But then also we have paid training to help you learn more about our methodology. And we also have, select engagements where we can we're not really the type of group that's trying to do it for you. We're the type of group that's trying to come alongside you, give you that boost, and then teach you how to do it so you can improve it for yourself. And so you can find all the information on those websites. There's tons of social and email and all that stuff you can do as well.
MECLABS actually do a certification in the training methodology, is that right? And the testing methodology, is that right?
That's right. I will go deeper if you want me to. So we have 4 courses. We have landing page optimization, online testing, value proposition development, and email messaging. And yes, you can get certified in all of those. We have the online on-demand courses you can take from anywhere in the world. You can take from New Zealand or Australia. And then we also have, we actually go and do on-site training. And actually, my colleague 2 or 3 weeks ago was in South Africa, in Cape Town, doing a value proposition development and quick win intensive. So, we're very focused on the US. Obviously, we're here, but we do this all over the world. So
awesome. Cool. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to have you.